All right, hello. Welcome back. We're now Saturday. Qualifying has finished here for the Amalie Motor Oil Gatornationals here at Gainesville Raceway to kick off the 2023 NHRA season. Had a lot of stuff going today. We had, again, the 2 final rounds of qualifying, and we had the Pep Boys All-Star call-out for the top fuel class. There is a huge amount of stories to cover through this event. Let's get into it. Kicking off in Pro Stock Motorcycle. I talked about this last night. I'm going to talk about it again. The young blood in that sport. I'm talking about Chase Van Sant. I'm talking about Gage Herrera. Those two right now are my thoughts as the biggest headline going into Sunday. Gage Herrera on top at the end of Q4. He set a blistering mile an hour of 203 miles an hour. This is his first outing for the Vance and Hines crew on what was Angel Zampé's bike. He has a huge amount of momentum going into tomorrow, and this is his first ride for Vance and Hines on the Suzuki on the Gen 3 Hayabusa. We had a chance to talk to him in the post-race media press conference. I asked him, with the momentum that you have, the fact that everybody's been hyping you up for the entire off-season, does having that #1 qualifier and a 203 mile an hour at the end of qualifying in your first outing take a bit of the weight off your shoulders, a bit of the pressure that everyone's been putting on you? Here's what he had to say.
I want to say it took weight off my shoulders. You know, obviously I'm on the best team out here, and so there's a lot of weight on my shoulders the whole time. You know, I got to perform to make them look good, and at the same time make myself look good. So it's definitely, I would say, more pressure on my shoulders now to keep the performance going.
In Pro Stock, we ended the day talking about Erica Enders and Camry Caruso. Erica Enders is still in the talk, but the headline now is Troy Coughlin Jr. in that Jegs Performance White Castle Chevy Camaro for, again, Elite Motorsports. He took away the top fastest spot at the end of Q3 and backed it up in Q4. Right now, that was his third #1 qualifier of his career, and now he has that #1 qualifier going into tomorrow. A huge deal for him, because I didn't really see him as maybe someone who was going to be a threat today or this weekend, however, and he went away and just completely took away the narrative that I had. Camry Caruso, what a fall from grace. I still have high hopes for her tomorrow, but she fell from second all the way down outside the top 10 into 12th or 13th or somewhere like that. We'll cover the top 16 later on, but again, Camry Caruso, not the day she wanted, not the news line, the headline that she wanted to end the day with, but I still think with what happened in Q1 and what happened in for the most of Q2, I think this was a solid weekend for her. I think it's exactly what she wanted. I think she did a good job. Greg Anderson's still up there in the top 10. Derek Kramer and Matt Hartford, I talked about them. They're down to 15 and 16. I don't know if they watched the video and got mad at me, but they jumped all the way up into the top 10. They completely changed the narrative of what they had going into this weekend after Q2 and completely changed that and are now some front runners going into tomorrow. So a huge deal for them. I'm excited to see what they're going to be able to do. Let's get in the funny car. In funny car, without a doubt, probably the biggest headline right now is Bob Tasca III. But again, like I talked about yesterday, for guys like Cruz Pedregon, not the reason that he wants. We talked about him, giving him the praises. He was the fastest qualifier at the end of day 1, going into day 2. He had a really good shot of maybe breaking Ron's time. Ron, by the way, got the #1 qualifier, but at the top end, he blew the motor and blew that hand-painted PPG body that he debuted yesterday. So not what he wanted. The team currently is back there in their pit, thrashing away to rebuild that motor from the bottom to the top, and the body still sits there with a cracked shell. I don't know if they're going to find a way to repair it, or if they have a backup body of the same hand-painted car that PPG painted for them, or we might see them break out the Motorcraft paint. I'm not really sure what we're going to expect. I'm assuming they're going to have a backup body because, you know, this stuff happens. But a huge narrative shift for him. He still sits top 5 on the timesheets, and he still has a really good shot. Honestly, I'll bite the bullet on here and say I was probably wrong, because just like a lot of people, we all kind of assumed that Cruz Pedregon was the only guy that around here that could break into the top 3. But as a matter of fact, Bob Tasca is out here and is like, hey, did you guys forget what I did last summer? Did you forget that hot streak I was on for a couple weeks? I think he does have it. There, he has those spurts of brilliance, and I do think he has an opportunity. If he can keep the momentum that he had on Friday and on Saturday and take on a Sunday and get into a semifinal or a final round, I think you're going to see a very strong Bob Tasca in that PPG Ford Mustang. I think he's a very quick driver. I think he's incredibly fast on the tree. I think he's going to be someone you need to watch out for. Someone else you're going to watch out for, John Force. I talked about it yesterday. He said in the Thursday press conference the fact that he watched his grandson play hockey over the offseason, and he reminded himself, what the heck happened to me? What the heck is going on? He remembered why he loved doing what he loved and got out of the mental curse that he had put himself in. And now, second after day 2. A really big step up for John Force. Like I said, it's been 10 years since that guy has won a funny car world title, and now he goes into Sunday second overall. So I think that's a huge step up for him. Ron Capps, of course, to no one's surprise. End of the day, the fastest number 1 qualifier. God knows how many number 1 qualifiers this is for him. But he talked in the post-race press conference that he couldn't see the tree. He drove blind off the tree because of the lane he was in. He had to go off when Bob Tasca went and then just send it down the track and hope for the best. He genuinely thought that John Force of Bob Tasca was going to obliterate that time, and it just didn't happen. Here's what he had to say in the press conference about that.
Yeah, very cool. That round was, for me, it was a little bit of anxiety because I couldn't see the Christmas tree. I could barely see the pre-stage, the blue, and then I started bumping it in, and I could see the bottom half of the blue stage light up, but I couldn't see any ambers. So I just said to myself, okay, don't mess up and leave before the tree. Just wait until Robert hits the gas and go, which is what I did. So it was hard to go down the track because he's out in front of me, and you're used to just shutting it off when that car's out in front of you. So I'm like, well, he's not pulling away, we're just staying there. And so I'm trying, every time I do that, my brain would say, stop looking, focus on the track. And so I'm looking and looking and looking and looking. And I was like, oh, he's in front of me. I don't know how late I was. It was hard to judge. But when they told me what it was and how close it was, that's down to staging. That's just trickling it in and Guido and the guys just throwing down. But my gosh, look at already, and we talked, all of us in this room talked preseason, and we talked about how tough it was going to be, how close it was going to be, and how hardcore and pissed off a lot of the drivers are. They didn't win the championship that had a run for it, And that's the thing, when you don't win it, you come out and you're so mad, and you just want the season to get started. And pretty much all those teams today that made those runs down the track near the end, the last half of the whole session, are teams you're going to have to go through to win a world championship, there's no doubt. So to do that, I had to wait down there forever for Forrest to run, and I thought him and Tasker were both going to just destroy that 87. So great job by the guys.
And then in Top Fuel, Brittany Forrest, number 1 qualifier, she keeps her time that she had after Q1. Who would have thunk it? Big surprise, Brittany Forrest is on top. She had a 3:36. That was a bit of a surprise for everybody in the media center. But here's another one. Steve Torrance, number 2. Again, he was number 6 after day 1. We talked about it over the offseason about the fact that you got to be careful with that guy. Them Capco boys are not ones to tread lightly with. If you give those guys momentum, they will go out there and they will stomp your foot in. And that's exactly what happened. Jump from 6th to 2nd. And he's the guy that I can look at that can upset Brittany Forrest and take it away, because he was the one guy in the entire round of qualifying that made Brittany seem human, that made it seem, okay, yeah, it is possible to reach that time to beat her ET. He was the only guy that came close. So I think he's someone you're going to need to watch out for tomorrow. Ron Capps actually talked about in the post-race press conference that he was upset to see how much Antron Brown struggled over the course of the weekend. But here's what I say about that. You can look at him being 6th overall and say that's not good. But where was he on the bracket seed for the U.S. Nationals? Do you guys remember? I had to look it up. He was 6th. The same position. You cannot count Antron Brown out. That car has speed. That car has talent. Obviously, Antron Brown has a drive to do it. He's a 3-time champion, for crying out loud. So that is a guy who I'm also going to be looking out for. Tony Schumacher down about the top 10. Clay Milliken, we keep talking about. He top 5 on the first event of the season, so a huge step up for the Rick Ware team. I had a chance to catch up with Rick Ware, didn't get an interview, but shook his hand. Was like, congratulations, top 5 time, because honestly, it is incredible what that team has been able to turn around over the last few races of the season. Had a really good showing at Texas, had a really good showing at the Carolina. I think that team, like I said, I proved it with how he performed in the call-out. didn't get the run he wanted, lost in round 1 to Brittany. I wasn't surprised by that, because I do think this is going to be the weekend where they really start to get the bugs figured out, but then by Arizona, that car is going to come alive, and I think that's when you're going to see the Clay Millican that everybody is anticipating. I think that's a guy you're going to look out for. I still do believe that. I think he's going to win his round 1 race tomorrow. Do I think he'd make the final? Possibly not, but he could easily make a semifinal appearance, and that would be a huge step up for that team, so that's definitely one you're going to look out for. I'll give my picks later on who I think is going to win that. And then lastly, there was a top fuel call out. Josh Hart stole the headlines again. He has had such success at this track, his hometown track. In his first ever top fuel start in 2021, he won the Gatornationals. This was his first Pep Boys All-Star call out. He didn't compete in last year's event at Indianapolis, so this was his first try, and he won it. So there's something about the Josh Hart storyline being here in Gainesville, which is just down the road from Ocala, which is where his shop is based, where he's lived from. And he talks so much about the support that he has from the town of Ocala is blown him away. Of course, I know a lot of people, I'm going to say this right now, a lot of people are like, we want to see Josh Hart give more emotion. I think no. Because Josh Hart is true to himself. He is true to who he is. He has been him since day one. He has not changed as a person or let the success get to him. The way I see him in terms of personality, the same way as people in NASCAR viewed Paul Menard, a guy who didn't really show much emotion, but was genuinely a beloved guy within the paddock, a genuinely beloved guy in the series by fans. Heck, you can remember the catchphrase. I can't say it on YouTube, but it's out there. You know what it is. I just don't get it. I think Josh Hart, for him being who he is, he's a unique character because of the fact that he does not show that emotion. He has an incredible poker face, but he's still a down-to-earth, genuine guy. He won a top field call-out. He spent more time in that press conference talking about how his team deserved to be sitting on that chair, not him. He gave his team all the praise and basically act like he did nothing. So I think that's a big thing that people need to realize is the fact that he did that. All right, so like you're talking about, we're going to hop in straight into the qualifying results and get you ready for Sunday's action. Like I said, at the top of the break, or at the top of the video, Gage Herrera ending the event with the Q1, his first qualifying #1 hat. He got it done with a 685. Steve Johnson filled a second with a 746. Chase Van Sant, again, I keep talking about the young blood, 747 in third. Matt Smith, again, not what he wanted. He sits in fourth, but with still a strong position to get it done. Hector Arana Jr. changed his narrative big time too. He was 16th at the end of the first day. He now sits up in the 8th position. He knocks down Eddie Krawick with a 6.803. That lines him up 9th. Ryan Ayler had a very close call in his Q4 run. He ends the afternoon finishing 11th in his class. Then Joey Gladstone is a guy that a lot of people have been hyping up. I hyped him up too, saying that he was going to have a really good season. Not the qualifying result he wanted. He finishes the 15th out of 16th with a 6.846. Deron Tornow finishes 16th, the last rider, I should say, to make it into the event with a 6.922. The three riders who did not get to race on Sunday, Malcolm Phillips Jr. with a 6.954. In 17th, he's the first rider out. 18th is Chris Bostick with a 7.066. He didn't even get to do a Q4 run. He actually got off the bike while he was in the burnout box. He couldn't get it fired, he couldn't get rolling, and had to push it back and watch as his chances of running the Gatornationals tomorrow went up in smoke. And then Lance Bonham was just not able to go any faster. In 19th, he finishes with a 7.1. Looking ahead to tomorrow's action, here's how to line up. Like I said, Gage Herrera finishes #1. He gets race number 16th, Ron Tornow. Again, Ron's not a rider you want to take lightly, because you always got to remember, who did he beat at the U.S. Nationals and sent home packing? The same person who's on that bike last year, Angel Sampey. So again, that's not someone you should take lightly. Hector Arana Jr. finishes 8th. He's going to take on Eddie Krawick. Matt Smith takes on Kelly Klontz. Gianna Evaristo will take on Mark Ingerson. Steve Johnson's going to take on Joey Gladstone. That's going to be a matchup you want to watch. That is my matchup to watch in Pro Stock Motorcycle, because those two are some very fast riders. I know I talked about Joey Gladstone not having the result that he wanted, but being 15th, that's going to give him a really good shot with Steve Johnson, and that could really be an upset of the afternoon, if you want to call it that, because again, it's Joey Gladstone. You can't take him lightly. Angie Smith rounds out 7th. She will face up against John Hall. Chase Van Sant, 13th, will take off against Richard Gatson in the 14th ranked. And then rounding it out is going to be Chip Ellis, 6th ranked, versus Ryan Ayler, 11th ranked. In terms of picks for Pro Stock Motorcycle, I want to say Gage Herrera. I do believe that is probably the top pick you want to have, just because the fact no one's been able to touch him besides Steve Johnson. And I know it's like, you really bit hard, didn't you? But the only other guy that I can see really making an upset is possibly Hector Rana Jr. He's been impressive. Or Matt Smith, just again doing Matt Smith things and just absolutely tearing away all the narratives that we had. There's a lot to go into tomorrow. I think, again, you want to watch out for Steve Johnson versus Joey Gladstone in round number 1. I think that is going to be one hell of a competition. That is going to be one heck of a race. They're going to be trying to beat each other off the tree, because that's probably what it's going to come down to. That's how competitive those two are. That's how close they are. But I think Steve Johnson right now, I'm going to go with him. I think Steve Johnson can get it done. I think he's going to be the one to do it. I think Gage Herrera, he talked about it. He has a lot of pressure on his shoulders that he put himself because of the fact of how many people hype him up, because of the fact that Terry Vance ran him through the ringer to hire him for the position. He has a lot to prove. I think he's going to have a good season, but I feel like the nerves might get to him, and Steve Johnson can take advantage of that and kick off this season with a Wally in his hand on the engine from Pomona. They still didn't even have a new engine. They're running the old body because they still don't have the Gen 3 high abuser from Suzuki. So I think Steve Johnson is going to upset the narrative here. I think Steve Johnson will take it. In Pro Stock, Troy Coughlin Jr. took the number 1 spot with a 6.515. He actually matched his teammate Erica Enders with another 5.15. She rounds out second. Mason McGahey with an impressive run with a 5.19. Another tie, 4th and 5th between Aaron Stanfield and Dallas Glenn with a 5.24. Kyle Koretsky in 6th with a 5.26. We got another tie, Bo Butner III and Derek Kramer with a 5.39 for 8th and 9th. Greg Anderson, someone who I had a lot of high hopes for, he finishes the afternoon in the 10th position. So not the result he wanted. Cameron Caruso, like I said, dropped to 12th. Matt Harford jumped up to 13th. Fernando Quadra Sr., and I say junior because there's actually something interesting about that, rounds out 14th. Jerry Tucker will make his first start in Pro Stock tomorrow for Elite Motorsports. He finishes the day 15th, and Larry Morgan gets the final spot. Now, why did I talk about Quadra? Because Fernando Quadra Jr. did not make the Gatornationals. He is going home. Only 2 of the Corral Boots cars are going to be racing on Sunday. Fernando Quadra Jr., 17th, first car out with a 6.578, barely behind Larry Morgan, 6.575. Alan Brzezinski, I'm heartbroken, man. A Dodge Dart did not make the field. That guy has struggled. I really had high hopes for him. I thought he might be able to pull off the miracle. No, he ends in 18th. Val Smeelan, we didn't see him all day yesterday. We only had 19 people take times on day 1. He takes it on day 2 and fares no better. 6.25 ends his afternoon as Shane Tucker. In his first race back in the NHRA on a full-time basis with the Europe, not the debut he wanted to make. He ends the slowest of the Pro Stock class with a 6.99. He goes home at the end of day 2, ending his Gatornational hopes as he tries to rebound, I believe, in Arizona. And the brackets, Troy Coughlin Jr. will going to take on Larry Morgan. Bo Butner III will take Derek Kramer. Aaron Stanfield versus Matt Harford, the 4th and 13th ranked drivers. Dallas Glenn is going to take on Cameron Caruso. I think that's when you're going to want to watch. I think Cameron Caruso can get it done. Erica Enders, the number 2, will take on her teammate on his debut race, Jerry Tucker. Christian Quadra, in 7th ranked, is going to take on Greg Anderson. Mason McGahey and Fernando Quadra Sr. will race against each other in round 1, and Kyle Koretsky and Chris McGahey will round out your 16 seed bracket. In terms of Pro Stock picks, that's a tough one because of how tight that class is. A lot of people are going to pick Erica. I'm not going to pick her. I'm going to pull it up one more time just so I can make sure, because I have a feeling about this. I'm going to go with Aaron Stanfield. I don't know why. I don't have a reason why. Just something about Aaron Stanfield being in 4th. He's been quiet most of the afternoon. I think he can get it done. I think Aaron Stanfield in that white Camaro is going to pull off an upset. Well, not really an upset. He's ranked number 4. I think he's going to get it done. That's my pick. I'm going to go on the way out and go pick him. So Aaron Stanfield, I think, is going to get it. I think it's going to be an interesting afternoon, especially with the fact you're going to keep up with Eric Enders and Greg Anderson on the opposite sides of the bracket. There is an opportunity that we can see them race each other in the finals yet again. So, again, Aaron Stanfield, my pick for Pro Stock. Let's hop in the funny car. In funny car, Ron Capps jumped from about the 6th position to the number 1 spot with a 3.874 in Q4. John Force keeps his number 2 spot in Q4 with a 3.878. Robert Haight as well makes the move up to 3rd with an 8.79. That demotes Bob Tasker to 3rd, back to the 4th spot. J.R. Todd, we talked about him being 3rd after day 1. He falls to 6th. Cruz Pedregon rounds out in 8th. Blake Alexander up there in 11th. Tim Wilkerson on his debut for the Maynard team with the Skag Mowers Ford Mustang. He ends his qualifying result in 12th. Alex Laughlin, I still have high hopes. He was 11th. He only dropped about 2 spots. He sits in the 13th position with a 4.012. He smoked the tires in Q3, had a pretty decent run in Q4 for his first ever one. I think he had to end up shutting it off toward the top end, but I do feel that he has a very strong car underneath him. I could see him maybe getting a round 2 win. I think that would be a good start for him. But again, first race out, I think he's had a really stellar performance for the fact that this is his first time in a funny car. He has a huge learning curve for what he has to accomplish, and I think he has done the task of what he needs to this weekend. He is learning, and now going into Sunday, he's going to have a very big competition. And then, of course, Terry Haddock finished 16th. That guy did not have one single clean run. Everybody else in the 4 seconds, his fastest time with the 3.67 after he smoked the tires and coasted it. That was just his fastest coast time. It's a struggling weekend for them. They're going to try and pull off the ultimate upset and take out Ron Capps around number 1. They're going to have a hard time doing that. But if they can make a good pass down the track, I think that's going to be perfect for them. Moving forward into the bracket. Ron Capps, like I said, is going to take on Terry Haddock, the 16th ranked car. Cruz Pedregon versus Lex DeJoria. Bob Tasker III versus Alex Laughlin. Matt Hagan's going to take on Tim Wilkerson. On the other side of the bracket, John Force will take on Dave Richards. Chad Green is going to take on Paul Lee. Then you see Robert Haight versus John Smith, and J.R. Todd and Blake Alexander rounds out your round 1 matchups. In terms of picks for that, obviously, it's easy to go out and pick Ron Capps, but with what John Force said in that press conference, I see John Force maybe pulling an upset. Well, not really an upset. I keep saying upset. This is not an upset. He's ranked 2nd for crying out loud. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say John Force. I think Ron Capps had a stellar weekend, but he only had the fast time in Q4. So again, while the dog is barking, John Force is my pick. I think he's going to pull it off. Okay, and then to round it all off, we have Top Fuel. Brittany Forrest, again, no surprise whatsoever. She ends off today number 1, the 3.699. Steve Torrance jumps to 2nd with a 7.23, tying with Doug Coletta. He keeps a 3rd, a credible result for the Coletta cam. For the fact that Doug Coletta jumps up to 3rd, he made it to, I believe, he made it to the semifinals in the Top Fuel call-out, which I'll point out here in a minute. And then it lost in the semifinals to Mike Salinas, but a really good result for that Mac Tools team. Leah Pruitt with another impressive run. She ends up in 4th, and Clay Milliken rounds out in 5th. And Sean Brown, like I said, in 6th. You want to keep an eye on him. I think he's going to have a good weekend, but I think he's really going to start to show his force come Arizona. And then Antron Brown, keep your eye out for him. I think he can pull off an upset from there. Mike Salinas ended up in the finals against Josh Hart, lost to him and lost 7th position. Justin Ashley jumped up from the bottom half, still in the bottom half, but closer to the top half, with a 9th overall with a 3.768. You have Spencer Massey, he jumped from the bump spot up to 14th, Scott Palmer in 15th, and then Keith Mert, whose trailer is actually behind us from Paducah, Kentucky, he makes the show with a 3.988, and Doug Foley gets bumped from the show with a 4.126. He will go home after today. And now your round 1 matchup. Talked about Keith Mert in 16th. He has the unfortunate matchup of Brittany Forrest. The number 8 Mike Salinas will take on Justin Ashley. Leah Pruitt will face Doug Foley in round 1, and Clay Milliken versus Austin Prock. That is your matchup to watch. I don't even need to look at the other side of the bracket. Clay Milliken and Austin Prock are 2 guys you need to watch out for. If you remember back in 2021 at Norwalk, Clay Milliken ended up in the hospital. Who took his ride for that weekend he was out? Austin Prock. He was the sub because John Force Racing was out due to the pandemic, because they couldn't get out of California. So those 2 are very close connected. Those 2 have not been able to really kind of separate each other. And there's 3 guys who Clay always seems to find himself around. It's either Doug Coletta or Austin Prock. So that's going to be a really, really interesting matchup to see just how far Clay Milliken's team has come. On the other side of the bracket, Steve Torrance is going to take on Scott Palmer. Josh Hart and Tony Schumacher, the 7th and the 10th ranked drivers facing off. I think that's another matchup you need to watch because Josh Hart has had a really, really fast piece under him, and Tony Schumacher has been another driver who you cannot tread lightly against. Doug Coletta will take on Spencer Massey, and then Antron Brown versus Sean Langdon. A really stacked class top to bottom for that 16 seed bracket. In terms of a pick for who I have in the top fuel ranks, it's really hard to say. That's how close that class is, and it's impossible to say. But I'm going to go with a gut feeling here. Josh Hart has had the momentum. The fact that he won the top fuel call-out says a lot about what that team is capable of. He just has some energy about him at Gainesville that comes out and performs at a high level. I think Josh Hart can get it done. I'm going to go with him. Josh Hart is going to win the Gatornationals tomorrow and take the sweep. Now, to wrap it all up, let's take a look at the bracket for the top fuel call-out. Brittany Force. Oh, that's the wrong one. There it is. All right. So Brittany Force called out Clay Milliken. It worked out for her. She beat Clay Milliken. Clay Milliken smoked the tires on half track. Steve Torrance called out Doug Coletta. That came to bite him. He spun about half track too. Doug Coletta took the win. Justin Ashley versus Mike Salinas. Mike Salinas took that win. And Austin Prock versus Josh Hart. Josh Hart takes the win there. Brittany on the top end was on the phone with her crew chief. They called out Josh Hart, and that ended up biting her. Her day ended early after she smoked the tires off the starting line, and Josh Hart took the win. And then Mike Salinas beat Doug Coletta to match up a final of Mike Salinas versus Josh Hart. Two rough and rowdy guys who had to claw their way to get up to the top end of the top fuel ranks, and Josh Hart wins the $80,000 bonus of the Pep Boys All-Star Call-Out. So overall, closing remarks, an incredible day top to bottom, an incredible weekend overall. I talk about it over and over again. To the Gainesville fans who showed up today, you packed the grandstands deep. Standing room only. It was sold out today. They announced it's sold out tomorrow. There's traffic, and we got 3 miles away from the track at 8 a.m. in the morning, and we didn't get in until 10. We didn't even get in until noon, didn't we? We didn't get in until 11. We were stuck in traffic for about an hour to get in here. We were 2 hours almost. We were 3 miles away from the track, and we were stopped. And it was like down on both ends because we had another guy coming from the north end. Traffic getting into this track was horrible. Traffic getting into the track tomorrow was horrible. I know it's like, why are you bragging about that? Because it's amazing. It's a good problem to have if you're having traffic issues on race day, because of the fact that the fans are showing up. The Gainesville faithful, I talk about them over and over and over again. They have shown up and shown out of why they deserve to have the first race on the calendar. This has been an incredible turnout from those fans. The pits behind me today have been absolutely jam-packed all day. It was shoulder to shoulder. Thank God we're past 2020 because this would be a nightmare. An incredible turnout for the fans. They showed up in full force. And just all weekend in general has been an incredible turnout. So to the people who wonder, why on earth would you move the season opener from Pomona to Gainesville? This is why. The fans showed up. The fans answered the call, and they sold out the place on day one. So again, an incredible afternoon, an incredible day, an incredible weekend. It's only going to get better tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for watching. To the people in the media center, again, NHRA has been so amazing to me. I love being here. I love being able to cover the sport and talk to the drivers and talk to the people in the media center. I am so excited for tomorrow, and if this is what we're going to get this season, then like I said, this is going to be a pivotal moment in the season. We had brought someone who hadn't been to an NHRA event in 5 years, and he said after the end of the day that he was hooked, and I'm going to keep echoing that. It only takes one race. It takes one race for a fan to get hooked. They just need the opportunity to go out and experience it because the fan access is unrivaled. The fact that you can walk these pits, you don't need a hot pass, you don't need to spend $1 million on a sponsorship budget, you don't need to know somebody, you just need a ticket. I mean, heck, the only difference between this media credential and a regular general admission ticket is the fact that I can walk the staging lanes and go up into the media center. Other than that, I have nothing different than what any other fan has here on the property. And the competition, the drivers, the personalities, it is something you cannot afford to miss. So I will say it over and over and over again. Drag your friends to this event. Go ahead and watch, and by all means, just enjoy the show, because this is going to be one hell of an afternoon. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe, follow me on all the social media pages that I'm going to have down linked below. And until then, I will see you next time. This has been Mighty Mac. Have a good night.